RD live show. My name is Megan Boitano, and I'm excited to have Dani. Do you like to go by Dani or Arielle? Which one's preferred?
I go by Dani.
Okay, Dani Lebovitz about self is publishing. And I don't know about you, but every time I see a dietitian that has a book, one, I'm incredibly proud of our profession, and two, I am floored because of the amount of work that it takes to put a book together and then figure out how to actually get it published, printed, sold, the marketing. You've got a book that's got tons of illustrations. It seems like climbing Mount Everest to me. Like writing a blog post is difficult enough, right? Publishing one of those, publishing a book to me seems like a life's work. So I know you have a number of books published. So I thought today we would share with the RD to RD community your journey. And as we were chatting beforehand, talking about the idea of being an expert in something, and that we always acknowledge that no matter how many times we've done something, there's always more to learn, but that you've been through the process of publishing a book. So while I'm sure you're always learning, that there's a lot you can share about along the way, and tips for those other dietitians who are anxiously listening and wanting to publish their own book. So, Dani, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey as a registered dietitian, and then we'll kind of segue into why you wanted to become a published author.
Sure. So, as with everybody else that comes on the show, I think to become this kind of non-traditional RD, we all start somewhere completely different than we are now. So I had actually never heard of a dietitian until my first year of college when I took an intro nutrition class. I never thought about nutrition. I just started college and was bio pre-med, and then I took a nutrition class, and well, the rest is history, I suppose. I transferred twice to find an accredited program. And while I was in my undergrad, I had actually ideas of things that I wanted to write about. And those books that I want to write about may come in the future, but that's for a completely different population than I'm currently working towards. But my favorite thing in undergrad was working with kids. I worked with a program called Program Energy that brought science enrichment into the classroom to reduce type 2 diabetes. So that is where I really started. Then, as everybody talks about in undergrad, this very clinical mindset, you do an internship. So I did my internship very clinically based at Johns Hopkins Baby Medical Center. And I actually did it with Heather Neal from the RD Entrepreneurs. So she was in my class.
I did not know that. That's such a fun little nugget.
Yeah, it's really neat to know her from then and see she's amazing. So I wish I had her entrepreneurial abilities.
She is very amazing. I'm so glad she's sharing that with the rest of us across the way she does it.
Absolutely. But yeah, so I did the internship. From there, I worked as a clinical dietitian at the hospital, a renal dietitian. I worked in health promotion. And then for 6.5 years, I worked as a health and fitness specialist and dietitian for the Air Force. So there I worked, I created running programs, weight loss programs, performance nutrition. So I have some background. I'm a sports dietitian and a CDE because I worked with all these different populations. But I brought a program called Catch Kids. I don't know if you've heard about it, but it is an evidence-based program that does 30 minutes of physical activity and 30 minutes of nutrition education. And really, I love working with kids because of the way that they learn and how excited they are about nutrition and about anything. But, when a child is passionate about food, which I am very passionate about food, and you see how they interact and relate, and when you get daily questions on children being picky eaters and you have solutions that work, then it inspires you to take that to the next level. So that's a little bit about my background and where I started. And my books presently are for children and families.
Got it. So then we talk about, so you're working clinical, you're working in health promotion, you're working with the Air Force. How does this I'm ready to embark on publishing a book. And I know we haven't talked at all, but you mentioned in our early conversations about crowdfunding, about getting your idea off the ground. So I need to know how this happened. Tell me more.
Sure. So I wanted to write a book for a long time, and my husband's active duty military, and he was on a deployment, and he came back, and we went on vacation. And on that vacation, I went on a cruise, and we were in Belize, and we saw a pineapple farm. Now, I could tell you the different enzymes in a pineapple that you should eat and the nutritional benefits and how to pick, store, and eat a pineapple. But did you know that one pineapple plant produces one fruit, and it might produce up to 3 fruits in the history of its life? So maybe from 1 to 3 years, but actually it could take up to 2 years for one pineapple to sprout from one plant.
No, I did not know that.
So when you spend $5 for a pineapple at the store and you think about where that came from, it really puts into perspective the cost. And also I thought I could tell you all these things, but I have no idea about the agriculture, and I really wanted to bridge that gap. So when we got back from that trip in 2011, my idea was born that I want to talk about where food comes from, not just where it originates in the world, but how it is grown, because that was kind of a self journey for me, learning about how foods grow themselves. And that's really fun, right? We like to, as dietitians, we typically like to read a lot and we like to research. And so I started writing, and I finished the book in December, the first book, which is Where Do Bananas Come From? A Book of Fruits. I'll show you that title. So this is the original, and I've since learned and grown from there. But that was in 2013 that manuscript was finished. And
so you did a printed book? Were you always, there's ebook and then there's printed book. How did you, so you started writing, and what kind of things did you look at? Did you know you just needed to put a manuscript together? How did you?
So I didn't, but what I did was, and I have some tips that, some actionable tools that I want to leave everybody with at the end. So I'll wait to provide those actionable tools.
Okay.
But in 2013, when I finished the book, I realized, if I want to reach out to publishers, I need to do a manuscript proposal. So I started researching manuscript proposals and putting all the content in that format. And so I started reaching out to literary agents and doing manuscript proposals. And basically they say it could take 4 weeks to 12 weeks to hear a response from us. And if you don't hear a response from us in 12 weeks, we're not interested. And a lot of the proposals say, we don't want you to send it to anybody else while you're sending it to us. And so I waited 2 years to hear something, anything, and I heard nothing.
So this, just because I'm not knowledgeable about book publishing, if you are self-publishing, do you still create a manuscript and send it to a publisher, or is this to get, your book published by a larger, talk to me a little bit more about that process.
So my goal originally was to publish through a publishing house.
Okay.
And so that was the process I went through before going to the crowdsourcing.
Okay, got it.
So I went through this whole process to try and get a publisher. But what I found, and what other people who were more well-connected would tell me, is you need to have a large following, keep growing your audience. And I don't know I know a lot of dietitians are like this. We have something we want to share so badly, and we just need to get it out there. And I really felt I tried 2 years to find a publisher, and I didn't focus on building a following, because my passion wasn't building this huge audience. It was getting these books into the world. And so in 2015, I decided that I would self-publish, and that's where crowdfunding came in.
I really think that's an important point you just made about we're so passionate about getting that thing out there. I interviewed Diane Rishkoff about her book, Health Takes Guts. She's, functional nutrition GI. And that was her thing. She felt so compelled. She had to write this book. Like, after practicing and helping her clients, she felt like this information, she didn't care if like one person bought the book. She just felt so compelled to put this out into the world. And I hear that from you. And I think that's something that, authors to go through the process, you have to be really passionate about getting this information out into the world. So I just want to commend you for that too.
Well, something I heard you say before in an interview brings us back to the movie, The Field of Dreams, right? Oh. If you build it, he will come. And I don't know, I feel like if you are that passionate about something, even if nobody comes, okay, but if you're that passionate about something and you have something to offer that is really different, is a niche, and it's something that you know, like Diane Rishkoff, she knew that her tools could make a tremendous impact. Mm-hmm. And so even if she didn't have a publisher, she had something that she knew would impact the lives of so many people. And so getting that down on paper is for me more important than, building your audience, because I feel as though you can do that later.
Yeah. And that there is a lot of people who've taken a lot of different journeys to the same successful end. And so often, there's, more than one way to get there. And that's why I really wanted, for you to share that, yay, you have this published book. It's wonderful. It's got awesome reviews on Amazon. And I'm sure that, you've sold more than just one copy to me, like it's sitting here of your books, right? That, there was bumpy, right? You didn't get there in a completely smooth process. So as we're kind of recapping, right? You decide to write this book, you try to get a publisher to pick it up for 2 years, and then you decide to go out there and get funding, crowdsourced funding. We're talking, so how did that work?
So when I decided that's it, I'm doing this book, when I was working, I had saved money. And I decided I was going to invest in my business, or what I was passionate about, which was this book writing. And also, I should say, in the meantime, in 2015, I moved from Georgia to Germany. My husband's military. So we're in Germany. I couldn't work full time here. I couldn't work on the economy. So this provided me an opportunity to work full time, but in my own capacity, working for myself. So what I did was I looked on Upwork, and I spent a lot of hours, and I found an illustrator who has turned out to be the most wonderful partner I could ever have dreamed of, that has transformed my vision into a reality. And so what I did was I invested in her first. We wrote and developed the book so that the timeline for printing the book would be shorter. And the other reason why that was important for me is that this isn't just one book. What I have developed is a series. So I write Whole Foods guidebooks for children and families. So the first book was on fruits. The second book was on vegetables. And the third book that should be out later this year is going to be on legumes. Then I'm doing one on nuts, seeds, and oils. Then it will be one on grains, and one on herbs and spices. So it's all this formula in the same format. And I had the money for the first book that I had saved and invested. And I wanted to use crowdsourcing as a way to help fund the second book, because self-publishing really isn't profitable in it of itself unless you are a New York Times bestseller. And money usually comes from other forms when you're publishing anyways.
I heard that you become kind of a recognized expert. And I don't know if it was at the Today's Dietitian conference or at Fancy, where, an author was speaking, talking about, we tend to focus on how many books have I sold, but simply by becoming a published author of a quality book, that people then look to you as an expert. So it opens other doors that I hadn't really thought of it. You tend to just say, oh, it's all about selling books. Uh-oh.
Right.
My internet's being kind of strange. Sorry.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a delay on the internet right now. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. I can see it. It's like flickering in between.
Okay.
It's better now.
But yeah, absolutely. So that's why I decided. And so the Kickstarter for me also was a way for me to do marketing, right? Because one, it validates that what you have to offer is something that people really want. If they help fund you and support you, you already sell books because that's part of crowdfunding. So the purpose of crowdfunding is to raise money to do something that you want to do with that money. So it could be creating a new garment or a new gadget or a board game. It could be anything, or a book. And so basically what people do is, or what you do to create a crowdfunding campaign is you create different reward levels for people to have. And so it could be $1. And for $1, you send them an email like, thank you very much. For me, my $1, I think, was a coloring book page. That was a character from the book. And you could have a $5 reward. You could have a $10 reward, and up to whatever you want it to be. And so I had these different reward levels to build that, to build my goal of achieving $10,000, and we raised over $11,000.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Congrats. The idea of doing a Kickstarter campaign, just like, wow, how would I even tackle that? And your passion to bring this information leads you to do things that you might not otherwise do to bring your idea forward. So I think that's awesome.
It is a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Like you said, you were working full time in the capacity that worked for you. This wasn't some, I spent 10 minutes and threw out this Kickstarter and in flew to, 11. How much time would you estimate? I'm just curious that you spent on the Kickstarter process.
Well, what was really nice is the rewards were all developed by my illustrator. And so after the rewards, we have a lot of digital rewards, right? So that's sort of how we got connected.
That's
because
right.
A lot of those digital rewards, I could then put on your digital marketplace and sell. So it was time well spent.
Your coloring pages of the alphabet letters, vegetables, and fruits are just so gorgeous. And every dietitian who sees kids should have those things in her office, his office for coloring, because they're just gorgeous.
Thank you.
They are.
So I couldn't even quantify the hours, because it's not just the hours you do putting into the copy and creating the campaign, and then, marketing the campaign and through the life cycle till you reach your goal. And then even after, and then you have to deliver, right? And so that delivery process is very time consuming too, especially if you're doing a book and then you're personally addressing everything and sending it out at the post office. But what I will say is, I believe the average self-published author sells less than 100 books in the lifetime of the books. And I was able to sell over 200 simply through a Kickstarter campaign.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that automatically bumped up the amount of sales. Although it would never reflect that on Amazon, because those aren't verified purchases.
Got it. So let's kind of walk back. We're kind of talking about Amazon, and you're talking about publishing a physical book on Amazon. There's a lot going on there. There's the format, there's the selling platform. Can you break that down for someone who's like, gee, I think I might want to sell my book on Amazon, but I really don't know where to start?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have some, like I said before, I have some tools I'm going to go over, and I will go over this again at the very end. But to start out, there are many different publishing options. So a lot of people publish directly through Amazon and CreateSpace, because that is the platform that sells directly to Amazon. It's run by Amazon. And so that makes it a one-stop shop, and it can be really easy. However, it may or may not be the most profitable option for you. And something else to consider is that if you create your book using the Amazon services such as CreateSpace, then you will never be in a brick and mortar store, because brick and mortar stores don't buy from Amazon. And also they even print on demand. And it's kind of stuck there. Like, what I mean by that is it won't also be on, say, barnesandnoble.com. So there are a lot of really good resources, and I can even post a few good, very brief articles that kind of talks about the benefits of each. But there are lots of other good options for printing. But again, how does that work to connect you with the largest book selection in the world, which is Amazon? So there is.
So if we pause there, the reason you use CreateSpace is CreateSpace all print on demand. Pardon my ignorance.
No, well, yes, CreateSpace does print on demand. I think if it's a very popular title, they might have some inventory. But I don't actually use Amazon to publish my books.
Because I think the hard part is, right, if you have to buy like 500 books and store them or print them, how does that whole thing work? I'm sure you're going to talk about that because I'm.
So my book also prints on demand, but it's from the #1 independent. Well, actually, some of the big publishing houses will use Ingram Spark too, but it's called Ingram Spark, and it's through an offshoot of the company called Lightning Source. So for the sake of our conversation, I'm going to say Ingram Spark because that's kind of how I think of it, but it's technically print on demand is Lightning Source, just as Amazon owns CreateSpace, and CreateSpace is who you publish through.
But you just say Amazon sometimes because it's easier.
But I would just say Amazon because most people who aren't doing publishing wouldn't necessarily associate, CreateSpace is their option. So you're
doing print on demand through Ingram Spark.
And so Amazon actually buys my book directly from Ingram Spark versus buying directly from CreateSpace. And there are lots of pluses and minuses, and it just depends what you want to do, what your goals are. So for me, Amazon, when I first started, which I think they perhaps have the option to now print hardback, but my book, I have always only wanted to print it hardback because it's for children. And Amazon didn't have that opportunity, so I didn't even consider printing through them. There's several different self-publishing houses that are more boutique publishing houses, but when I costed everything out, they were much more expensive.
So when you go through this costing process, so if that's kind of important to be looking at, am I going to print on demand, which, per book, I'm not going to make as much, right? Because you're paying a lot because it's being printed on demand versus some people will stuff their garage full of books, right? And one by one ship them out, which is one way, right?
Sure.
How did you cost out all of these different options? Because that to me seems like an important step in the process.
Absolutely. So I don't have the same, I needed something easy. I needed something simple, and I needed something that was going to be already set up for me. So I do have a stack of my own books at my house for if I'm at a health fair, or if I need to if I want to personalize some books for some people. But ultimately, at the end of the day, Ingram Sparks talks to Amazon, and actually Amazon can purchase from them directly. There's no go-between for me. And it makes it really easy because all I do is I upload my book, and then it is readily available for everybody to buy. And actually, this last book I uploaded, I could find it on Amazon in less than 24 hours.
Wow.
That it was available for pre-sale.
So we have a couple questions coming in. So I want to make sure people know that I've not forgotten their questions and I'm not being selfish and hogging all of Dani's knowledge. No, I'm kidding. So
but one thing I do, before you ask a question real quickly, one big piece I want to talk about is the wholesale discount. So this is something that is very different to think about. So the cost of the book is how much it costs to print. That's the start, right?
So let's say it's like $10 or something. I don't know.
Let's say the cost of your book to print it is $10. And then you sell it, say for, I'm terrible at public math, but let's say you're selling it for $20.
Great.
Well, if you're selling that book on Amazon and you are selling it through Amazon, You get to choose either I believe it is a 40% or a 70% wholesale discount, which means that even if you're selling the book for $20 and it costs $10 to print, your profit margin isn't $10.
Oh, right.
So it's a lot less than what you think. And also, even if Amazon says it's 30% or 70%, it depends where in the world it's printed and then how that translates to what actually is in your bank account. So
that's if you go through CreateSpace? Is that if you're going through?
That's if you're going through CreateSpace. Now, for a brick and mortar store, let's say you are writing this really phenomenal book and your goal is to see it in every brick and mortar store there is out there. The average brick and mortar store will not accept a book unless there is at least a 50% discount. Most brick and mortar stores get a 60% discount on the wholesale price. So
run me through those numbers again, because my brain's like, okay.
Actually, I have a really good example. Let me see if I can pull it up. And so you recap, and I will see if I can pull up an example.
Okay. Well, oh dear, you guys are asking me to recap this topic. No, but I'm just wondering. So if you have, the brick and mortar, I got kind of lost there. That if your book price is $20, let's say, they're expecting a 60%, so they're expecting to get that book for $14. Is that what you're saying?
So let me do it with somebody else who did public math for me.
Okay.
So this would be what we want to know is how much we're going to make, right?
Yeah,
what are the royalties? That we want the money, which again, self-publishing is not the most profitable business. So,
but just you don't want to lose money, right? Let's not lose money too.
That's true. Okay, so CreateSpace sets their wholesale discount at 20% for the CreateSpace store. So if you buy your books directly from CreateSpace, which is a subsidiary of Amazon,
can't sell it in brick and mortars.
Right, then you would get it at a 20% wholesale discount. If you sell it on Amazon, Amazon automatically takes a 40%. And if it's on their expanded distribution, which means that it can go all over the world, it would be a 60%. So if your retail price of your book is about $15, you would receive less than $7 in royalties.
Got it. Okay, that helps me understand. And then I know, let me see here. So, question. Have you had problems with Ingram printing poor quality books? Because your book, as Lindsay clearly pointed out, are really pretty. And the quality of the printing, if your colors were not so good, it would greatly diminish the value of your book. Kids are going to be looking at it. They have eyes that don't look at things unless they're pretty. So, how she had to take her book off the market because it kept sending misprint. So the quality of Ingram Spark, or maybe talking about that whole journey, right?
Sure. So in my heart of hearts, I would love to have a book that has really thick paper and incredible color saturation. It's a children's book. You know, you have kids, so as you're going through books, they have a different feel. It is very expensive and a very small profit margin when you're printing a full color book. The first book I wrote, this is the first in the edition of Where Do Bananas Come From? A Book of Fruits. And as a little sneak peek, and I just shared with Megan before we got on today, I have actually updated. I have a revised and expanded second edition of my original book because as you grow and develop and really figure out what works in self-publishing to develop the rest of my series and making this a cost-effective and beautiful way to print, which is exactly why I redid this, is a learning process. So this book is a $30 book. I made about $3 per book.
Ooh.
And and if you open it up, the color saturation is okay, but it's not amazing. And the pages are sort of thin. The quality of the print at Ingram has always been great for me. Whenever I've had an issue, I email them. For example, another book was printed in front of one of my books. So it was my hardbound book, but there were 2 books in there. And it was somebody else's title. And I just emailed them or got on their live chat, and then they sent me a ticket, and I sent in pictures, and they replaced it right away. We did the entire book. This is how the new series looks, and the new banana book that's coming out on World Health Day, which is the 7th of April. This is what the title looks like. Because I live in Germany, it takes a little bit of time to get to me. This book is about, I'm going to be really honest, I will make about $5 per book. And so it's still not a huge profit margin, but again, my passion, it's not necessarily about the profit. But this has 70-pound weight paper, which changes the way the color saturation looks. You do have premium, maybe be a 10-cent profit. It's that much more expensive for the premium ink. So this is the regular ink, the 70-pound paper. It may not be my favorite. It's not the texture that I would want, right? In my heart of hearts, if I were able to, all of the books are printed in the US. They're not printed in China. Most of the books you see that are printed in China that have, those nice thick paper sheen and really glossy are less expensive, but they're also printed in China and or overseas. And so the quality may be really nice, but you're not going to get that print on demand in the US. And I will tell you, I did order a book that I know is print on demand through CreateSpace. And for me, the color saturation wasn't quite as good, but I wasn't comparing apples to apples. It wasn't my book. It was somebody else's children's book. But I have found that the quality to be very good. And the customer service has been great.
And that's good to know. I know they're very popular, right? They're very big. So let's talk about Amazon. Large. So selling, you were mentioning Barnes & Noble, you were mentioning Amazon, the whole selling of your book and kind of your book launch, because it's already, like we've been talking about the publishing process, and it's just mesmerizing for me. But I want to talk about that whole, okay, I'm working on my book, and you've done this a few times, so I'm sure you learned as you published your fruits book, and then you were getting ready to launch your vegetable book, your book of vegetables, which I love. How did you start to think about, one, your book launch plan, and then this whole review? Like, talk me through this, because this seems like climbing Mount Everest to me. Okay.
So I'm going to tell you a few more things as you go through the publishing process, just to keep in mind. And then I will talk about the book launch, just because I feel like I want to share some other things to keep in mind.
Okay.
So I think to really have an idea of how you want a book to look and doing some cost analysis, all of the websites have great calculators where you can put in your book size, like the trim, the page numbers, if you want it in color or black and white, and you can cost it out. So you will know that beforehand. Another thing to keep in mind is keywords, metadata, subject codes, copyright, ISBN numbers. It's a process. And I kind of want to give a plug for another dietitian. This book is very basic, and it is, if you are really looking into publishing and you want to get over the scary side of publishing, this book is by Julie Bayer. I don't know if you're familiar with her. It's You Can Write a Book. And it's several years old now. But basically, it's very simply written for you as a dietitian. She's a dietitian too. And it kind of takes you through the steps and the process and where to go to get your ISBN and what you should think about, and make sure you have a good proofreader. And so for me, I came on this book at the very end because I had already written and already gone through all that process. But it was sort of like having somebody hold my hand through, okay, I need to get an ISBN number. What does that look like? I need to copyright my material. How do I do that? Who do you seek for legal advice to make sure, or trademarking and things like that. So if I could just give her a little plug, or if you are looking for just somebody to sort of be your coach, it's a really simple book to kind of take you through that process.
We're getting some more shout outs for Julie's book here in comments. So
awesome. Oh, great.
Ditto on that.
Yeah, it's simplistic, and it's exactly what you would want your friend to tell you. So there are other things that we didn't necessarily get into, and it's really hard on a one conversation thing, but that's important as you are getting up to your book launch. And the reason why it made me think about this is you think you're done with the book, you're there, you're ready to upload it. So you're starting to tell people about it, and you're doing this book launch and marketing plan.
Before you say you're getting ready to upload it, what program do you use? Are you writing in Word? Like, where are you writing your book?
So my book's a PDF because, my book is created using multiple programs because this vegetable book has over 650 images in it, and it's completely illustrated. Right. So there are several programs that are used to create this book. But say, for example, the majority of dietitians are not creating a children's book that has a lot of images. A lot of it is written dialogue with maybe a few things here and there. It just depends. I believe most of them accept a PDF version. So you could just convert your book to PDF. And they also, before you click, yes, I'm ready, you get an an e-proof. So if it didn't come out right, then upload it again, and it doesn't cost you anything.
Okay, good.
So, and what I would also say is, if you have gotten this far, perhaps think about outsourcing that last piece to get your book in a format that's easy for uploading, because that is one stressful and possibly time-consuming thing that could cost you maybe $40 if you hired somebody that knows what they're doing in an hour. And what unique thing can you be doing with your time that nobody else could do in that hour? And how much is your time worth? So, when there's something that is not your expertise, you've written this fantastic book, let's give it's your best effort. Let somebody else do something that's really challenging for you to do and make it more simplistic. So if that's creating a cover, or if that is doing the proofreading, or if that's simply converting your book into an easy format, then I would strongly suggest that.
Really good tip.
Yeah. And the one caveat to that I had is I outsourced for my first ebook, and they did a terrible job. There was nothing special about it, and I spent too much money. Now Amazon Kindle, my ebook is only on Kindle. Originally I had somebody create it so that I could have it be in Google Play Books and on Kindle. But I found that most people read on Kindle, or the majority, I'd say 80% that I encountered from the Kickstarter wanted it via Kindle. And they have an awesome program. So basically you download the program, you upload your PDF, you can look at it, what it looks like on an iPhone screen, and then, and on your computer, and then it's done. So the ebook conversion, you can do yourself after you've already uploaded your PDF, and it's super easy.
Got it. Once you outsource the formatting part.
Right. And for me, that was easy because I already had somebody doing it. But just to show you, for example, so I simply uploaded my PDF to to the Kindle app, or to the Kindle, they call it Creator, or Kindle Children's Book Creator, or something like that. And it does all the work for you, and then you can check it, and if it looks good, great. And then you just hit publish, and that was easy as pie.
Then it's on the Kindle store. Got it.
That one's on the Kindle store. Yeah.
Okay, because you've got your book on Amazon, which is the actual physical book. Right. Got it. Okay.
But for ebooks, you could totally do yourself.
Right. Okay. That's very, very timely. So now we're kind of talking about the book launch, that whole process. So you're kind of overwhelmed just getting your book out, and now you're trying to do a book launch plan. What have you found works for you, and as far as marketing?
Sure. So we've talked before, I am not the best at marketing. So for marketing advice, there are a lot of other dietitians who could provide you with better advice, I am sure. But I will tell you what things I have learned in my experience that have been the most successful. So realizing that there's a lot of final steps before you promise a print date. And so that was my kind of reason for backing up a little bit, because even though you think you might be done, there's probably still a little bit more to get you there. And so you could tease like, this book will be out in the fall, but wait until it's done to set a specific date. Or once you've uploaded it into all the systems, then set your date. Another thing to keep in mind is that your book should be done and uploaded 2 weeks before it is coming out, because that's when it will start being printed. If you have pre-sales, it'll already be printed and shipped about 2 weeks before the actual release date. So as far as marketing, what approaches have worked for me is getting your dietitian community involved, reaching out to people who are like-minded or who have like-minded audiences. You could do a press release. You could do, I have a couple of notes here. One thing that I think is really helpful is getting book reviews through advanced review copies. So my second book and my pre-sale book of my newly revised and expanded Where Do Bananas Come From? I have sent out several advanced review copies to influencers or people who I really value their opinion, and I will get feedback back, like, I think you should add this. For example, I'll give a plug for another dietitian. Are you familiar with Lily Nichols? She has the Real Food Pregnancy.
Yes, I'm familiar with the book. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I reached out to her, and I was just a fan of her work, and picked her brain a little bit and asked her if I could send her the book. And I know she has a young son as well. And so she skimmed through it, and she provided some additional things she thought that might be beneficial to add. So I think that, and then she gave a really nice quote that I include on my Amazon page. Nice. So I think reaching out to your peer groups who have similar audience or similar values is really helpful, because not only can you enrich your material, but it introduces them to what you have to offer. And quotes that you either put on your book or on your Amazon page give you more efficacy of what you are publishing.
I'm going to have you check your plug on your headset, maybe, because you will go quieter and then you'll go louder. So maybe it's your hair or your plug. I don't know. We can hear you. Okay. We can hear you. You'll go a little bit louder and a little bit quieter.
I'm sorry.
No.
Maybe I move too much when I talk.
I'm always extremely animated. So I get some trolls sometimes on my YouTube channel. I'm like, who really spends the time to tell me to like calm down on my YouTube videos? I'm always like, thank you for that helpful feedback. Be sure to not take that into consideration. I'm kidding.
They just wish that they had your energy and guidance.
They were like, don't quit your day job. And I'm like, don't worry, I'm not. Professional YouTubing is not in my future.
That's right.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. Whatever.
Well, the last thing I would say is tidbits and teasers people really like, and also getting them involved. So I have to tell you, for my veggie book, we narrowed it down to 3 covers or 4 covers. And I really actually don't love this cover. This cover is not for me. My style is less is more, very simple, a lot of white space. This is very busy for me. But on social media, I put out 3 very different looks of potential book covers. I put it on my pages, and I also asked for feedback on some of the dietitian pages, because I wanted to know, like, what would you really like? And overwhelmingly, people loved this busy cover. And so I had to do something to make it a little bit more appealing for my eyes and move some of the busyness away. But people really loved that, and they really engaged, and they gave really good advice. And so I would say reach out to your peer groups. There's so many wonderful Facebook communities that are just ready to help in whatever way they can, and they're experts, right? They're
Right.
experts in the same field.
Right. And I think that whole idea of anytime you do something the first time, let's be honest, it's probably going to not be perfect, right?
Right.
No matter how much you read, no matter how many blog posts you look at, no matter how many podcasts you listen to, no matter how many experts you ask, you're still going to get bumps and bruises and, get surprises. That's just kind of part of the journey, and that you can always publish version 2, right? Like you're doing now.
I think a really good thing for us dietitians to remember is that we are perfectionists. And when it is 70 to 80% there, when you feel like you're 70 to 80%, just put it out into the world and ask for feedback. There's always room for improvement, and nothing is ever going to be perfect. And it shouldn't be, right? Because as you continue to learn and develop and hone in on what you want to do, that's why like the first fruit book, the profit margin was really low. It's beautiful, but it's not exactly the way I want the paper to feel when I'm flipping through the pages with my daughter. And so you live and you learn about the flow, how people experience things. And we did a lot of research on that first book. The first book, the fruit book, is a 4-page spread, meaning each fruit had 4 pages in the book. And that's because children like a lot of white space when they're reading. But it was too expensive to print it that way. So we completely redesigned it for the vegetable book, made it a 2-page spread per vegetable. And so it's still visually beautiful. We increased the spine size just slightly so we could increase, I don't know if you can see the difference between the sizes here. And so that allotted a lot more white space, and we made the flow better. And so I had to completely rewrite the content when I redid the book, because when we put images in, I would say, oh, this is what the fig flower looks like. It's actually an inverted flower. So, and now I would say, instead of this is a fig flower, I would say, did you know that, or the fig is actually an inverted flower, and it's a multiple fruit, and it gets pollinated by a special wasp that comes in the bottom of the fruit that gets broken down by an enzyme. So it's so much more content rich instead of just having images. And that's something that I didn't even consider when I first wrote it, because I had one thing in mind that's developed over time. So give yourself some grace.
A huge plug for your books. Like I said, I use them with my own child, and they're interesting for me as an adult, and yet the little characters and the illustrations are capturing, but also from that science angle of knowing where your food came from, that whole farm to table, and that it research actually shows that it helps kids try new foods, to see pictures of foods. If you see a picture of a cauliflower cut in half, you become less like, what is that crazy food? And so I just love what you're bringing into the world as far as tools for someone who works with kids. This is, I'm so thankful when people are passionate about something and provide awesome resources that we can then just tag on to all of your effort and use. So thank you. I gave a talk at a library, and I was like, you need this in your library. Get these books.
It's so funny. I was laughing because I just really started using the book with my daughter, and tonight at dinner we had fennel, and we had kohlrabi, and so my daughter, I said, oh, do you want to see what this looks like in the book? And so she loves the character. She's just over 2, and then we're slipping through the pages, and she gets to sweet potato, and I said, oh, it's a pirate. Arr, I'm a pirate. And so we're telling her, Shiloh, this is a pirate, and she's like, no, that's not a pirate. what is it, Shiloh? It's an R.
You're like, yeah, that's true. It is a good, it's a great tool. So, wow, we've tackled a lot. So how can people learn more about what you're doing at Experience Delicious now, which is your website, Experience Delicious, and how can they connect with you, follow you, support you?
Absolutely. But can I give the tips? If
Yes.
there's no time, I'd rather give the tips than
the tips
in my website. So because I feel like I want people who have spent time with us tonight or who might come through
do the tips
later, I want to give them some actionable tips so that it will help you on your self-publishing journey. That's what I would want to listen to this interview for if this was me 4 years ago. So to start, what I would say is start with your idea and research what is out there on the market. So how is what you are doing different than what is currently being offered? So you might call it a market analysis. What are you doing that's different? What makes your content stand out among the crowd? Why are you unique? The next tip is to think like a publisher. So what I would invite you to do is Google manuscript proposals, and I looked it up today. There's over 60 million links. And so read a few of the top ones, read a few of the guidelines that major publishers ask for as you're creating a manuscript. Remember, I told you I wrote the book and then I was like, oh, I need to do a manuscript proposal. So instead of doing it like the way I did it, instead think of it like a publisher. And it's sort of like taking the approach of writing a business proposal about your book. So, and if you're not so savvy on the business side, doing a manuscript proposal and just kind of copying what they're asking for will tell you what exactly to write about. So what is your vision? How this book benefit your community? Why would somebody buy this book? How, let's see, what did I write? How is your selection of topics or treatment on the subject encourage readers to buy your publication over somebody else's? What is special about it? What makes your book unique? What are the major themes? And what is your approach? Why are you writing this? And who are you writing this book for? Do your market analysis, compare against what's out there, and really do some pre-research. And the other research I would do is have an idea for what your trim size is so that you can figure out where you need to be as far as your costing. What are similar books? What are the price of similar books in your same field so that you can sort of price it appropriately and then work your way backwards. So you're not going to charge $20 for a book that most people charge $15 unless you have something really unique and special to offer. And if you work back from there, then what's your trim size, your page number, and will you be able to achieve that profit margin? Again, we talked about royalties. You can put that into any of the royalty calculators. So I can also send you some resources if you want to post with this link. But on Ingram Spark, it's super easy and you don't even have to log in or anything. You can say, oh, this is when I want to price it. This is what I think the page is and all of that. And what you're going to set as your wholesale discount. All right. So think like a publisher. All right. The third one is, what is your goal for writing a book? And be realistic. So we sort of talked about, do you want to be seen as an expert and build credibility? It's a great option. Is it for your clients? Is your book something you're writing for your clients that they're going to want to purchase when they're working with you? Did you build your business around your book? Is your book mission-based? Like you have to get this book into the world. If your book is to make money, you should really think about that because the average self-publisher sells less than 100 books. And the average profit that they make in the lifetime of the book is less than $1,000. Even your best sellers, and I'll send a link for this too, don't have a great profit margin. Where they get their money from is all the licensing associated with the books. So J.K. Rowling didn't make a ton of money originally on the books. She might have made a good profit, but the money came from other avenues. So really think about what your goal is and be realistic. The fourth one is have a great editor and proofreader. Then print it, even if it's printed on paper, which is what I have on my fruit book because it hasn't made it to me yet. And after you print it, have a few fresh eyes read it. I had 4 people read this last book before we went to print. Everybody caught something different. There were very few things that were overlapping. And then my last reread through, I found new things as well. And then lastly, research all your print options, your digital options, and how they will best serve you. Do you want to sell it in a brick and mortar store? Okay, then perhaps Amazon, going straight through Amazon isn't your best option. Do you just want it to be simple and easy? Then maybe it is your best option. Do you want to identify how much you want to sell and how much wholesale discount you'd like to set it at? Then maybe Ingram Spark's better for you. And as one example, Ingram Spark works well for me because I can set a 30% discount. Whereas if I were able to print hardback and go straight through Amazon CreateSpace, my discount would, lowest wholesale discount would be 40%. So that's 10% more simply by using a third party. So those are some things that I would send you on your way to make sure that you would have the most success you could possibly have, and things that I wish that I would have known when I started my journey.
Wow.
And
that's great.
And if you want to reach me, you can follow me on social media. My Facebook group is Experience Delicious, and my Instagram account is experience.delicious, and my website is experiencedeliciousnow.com. And you can find both of, or all 3 of my books, but my vegetable book and my new Where Does Bananas Come From? A Book of Fruits, a revised and expanded 2nd edition, and Where Does Broccoli Come From? A Book of Vegetables, all on Amazon. And if you, like me, like to use the Kindle app, and I use this for shopping on my own, you might consider getting the ebook with the print version because it's part of something called Matchbook. So if you buy one of the paperback or the hardback copies of the book, I think it's $3, you can get the Kindle PDF or Kindle book. So I personally use it while I'm shopping on the go because I can't remember 102 vegetables and 108 fruit when I'm out shopping.
No, I really enjoyed learning all of the in-season type information as well as how to like prep these fruits and vegetables. So yeah, it's really nice. So it's not just for kids, that's for sure.
Thank you very much.
So, Dani, I have to say that this was a particularly awesome interview. One, you spent a ton of time getting ready to give super awesome value-added tips. So I definitely want to take all of these good nuggets and put together a little blog post with some of your best tips in here because a lot of good, juicy stuff in here. And wish you the very best with your new book series. I didn't know you were doing one on legumes. That's amazing.
That should hopefully be out by this fall. And in the meantime, we're doing an activity books for kids. So there'll be a fruit and vegetable activity book. We're going to do journals so that you can keep track of all your 5 senses taste testing in one place. So you can go back and look at what you really loved and what you didn't like as much. So there's going to be some other value added things kind of. I
really think these tools, and I think you kind of think of it as a children's book, but I think they really work as a dietitian to, help people do more plant-based eating. Mm-hmm. This book, there really isn't anything else out there like it as far as how to eat it. It's, when is it in season? All of the information about the book, that these are, really great tools. There's so many families out there. So
just trying to reduce barriers to get people to eat more whole foods.
Yeah,
right?
so it'll be fun to see how your journey, publishing journey continues. So thank you again, everyone.
Thank you.
It was a lot of fun. So we're going to go ahead, and anything else you want to add before we sign
I
off?
was just going to say, if there's any more questions people have, they can reach out to me. And if you're interested in going more specific on one topic like ISBNs or copyright process or something like that, I'd be happy to do like a really quick video chat or something like that you can post for people that kind of talks people through the process. Or the subjects you pick is how you enter the search engine within Amazon. So all these like little things that I was trying to tell you, like kind of warn you about, like when you think you're done, you might have a little bit more. I'm really happy to support. I love seeing dietitian books. My favorite dietitian book to give away, all of our friends are having babies, is Born to Eat by Wendy Jo Peterson. That's a great book. I've probably bought just myself 20 books of hers to give to people. There are that many babies. So
wow.
I love dietitian books, and I think there should be more out there.
Agreed. Well, thank you again. Thank you everyone for tuning in. And if the questions come up, I'll be sure to tag you, Dani. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks on a totally different topic, but we're going to talk about meal planning, consulting work for businesses. So often I see people ask, I've been asked to plan a menu, whether it's for a preschool or long-term care or for a corporate, the analysis, how do I charge for it, all of that kind of stuff. So we're going to talk about that with Susie Fisher. She has a ton of experience doing that. And how can you leverage that, one, for revenue, and two, so you don't underprice yourself? What tools do you need? It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited about that topic. So join us in 2 weeks on the 3rd of April. All right, we'll see you guys all back here in a couple of weeks if that one's on your list.